So a while back, I did a video about 5 ways that bad contractors cheat their clients. It's an important topic, and I felt like that it raised a lot of good points. But naturally, a lot of contractors wrote in to say, why don't you also do a video on all the bad things that clients do too? I promised them that I would, and given that it's Halloween week, I figured it's finally time to address the topic of nightmare clients. So today, I'm going to talk about the 4 worst things that clients do to contractors, and I'll also give some constructive advice on how to avoid sabotaging your contractor relationship. And that's coming up next on the Honest Carpenter Show. I'll say right now that the reason it's so important to maintain a good relationship with your GC is that nothing really improves once that relationship turns bad. It's hard enough to find a good contractor these days. If they begin to see you as a problem client, they're not going to be in any rush to prioritize your job. Contracting is a high-pressure industry. If you burn them out with antagonizing behavior, your project may start to go off the tracks. And once it's off the tracks, it'll probably never get back on again. So keep your relationship with your GC on a good footing and avoid becoming these nightmare clients. Number 1, the window shopper. Some clients make the mistake of believing that hiring a contractor is just like buying any other retail object. They can browse and question at their leisure and never have any real intention of purchasing. But this is very wrong. Contractors aren't clothes hanging in store windows. They're people with extremely busy schedules and a lot of responsibilities. So it's best to not even call a contractor until you're almost ready to start a project. You don't have to hire every contractor you call, and you are wise to get multiple bids on certain projects. But if you only have a casual passing interest in, say, a big remodel, but it's something you don't really plan to tackle for years, please don't pick up the phone yet. That contractor is handling present-day concerns, and there's a chance they won't even be in business in 3 years when you're finally committed to starting. So do your own research in the meantime. Talk to friends who know about the industry, scour the internet for ideas, but leave your contractor be until you're ready to get down to business. Nightmare client number 2, the tough guy. Somewhere along the way, an idea got popular that it's a good idea to present your contractor with this tough, slightly hostile demeanor, like a rude, demanding boss. From the moment a tough guy client meets a contractor, they try to assert this sort of dominance over them. They make it seem like it's a burden to show them their house, or that they don't really have time for the contractor. They'll say numerous times, I want you to know that I'm getting multiple bids. And as I said before, it's wise to get multiple bids, but it should never be used as a threat. If you present the job as this carrot that you're dangling in front of a bunch of contractors because you want them to fight for it, then you're already off to a bad start. Good contractors are vanishing by the day. They're an endangered species. But the number of desperate clients out there is increasing all the time. So if a good contractor gets the sense that you're going to be really difficult to work with, or you're just playing them off other bids, then they're most likely going to say, see you later. Just treat your contractor with respect. Treat them as though they're in a bubble where they're allowed to consider the job on their own terms, and then thank them for looking at it. If they ask if you're getting other bids, be honest, but don't belabor the point. They'll understand that you're only looking for the right person to do the job, and that's part of our business. If everyone puts their best foot forward from the start, then you've got your best chance for a really good contracting experience. Nightmare client number 3, the mind changer. This is the most classic and most common type of nightmare client to be found. Contracting is nothing more than a long string of decisions. From the earliest phases of a job, decisions will need to be made. If it's a remodel or addition, then every little thing from paint color on your walls to the width of your grout lines will need to be discussed and decided upon. Your contractor is there to help guide you through these decisions. Then they'll take your decisions and translate them into the building process. But huge problems arise when clients change their minds on big elements deep into that process. They may see a certain trim profile somewhere and decide that they just have to have it. Or a floor plan may start to take shape and they realize that it's not quite what they were expecting, so they want the whole thing changed. This is like derailing a 50-car train. When you request a major change late in the game, it messes up weeks or even months of careful planning. By now, materials have already been ordered, subs have been lined up, days have been carved out to do the work. Whole rooms can be thrown off because the width of a casing changes by like half an inch. The problems compound from there, and your contractor has to deal with all of it. Now, to some degree, this is to be expected. Clients can't visualize everything, and sometimes a nagging detail really should be changed to keep the client happy. But if the client insists on major changes to a firmly agreed upon plan, or if they keep changing their minds about every little thing, then they have crossed into the realm of the nightmare client. If this goes too far, the job will begin to break down. The contractor will realize that they just can't win. They'll start to consider how they can cut ties with the client and get out with their shirt on. To avoid this, make really clear-cut plans with your contractor. Always ask to see samples and drawings. Do whatever you have to do to visualize the finished product beforehand. And once you've made your final decisions, please try your hardest to stick with them. Small changes are to be expected. Big, sudden changes are toxic. And finally, number 4 is the most notorious nightmare client of all. I call them the second guesser. In all my years of construction work, I only ever encountered 2 second guessers. I won't name names, and I won't even show job pictures. But to this day, those clients still haunt me, and I haven't forgotten their jobs. So the second guesser is a monster of deception. Because unlike the naive window shopper or the capricious mind changer, the second guesser knows they're going to do something wrong from the start. Here's how it works. So the client will call the contractor and say, "Hey, I've heard you do amazing work. I'd love for you to tackle my project." And when the contractor comes out for the bid, the client is the model of friendliness. They'll ask all the right questions, they'll be polite, and they'll insist that the contractor just has to be the person for the job. So the estimate will get drawn up, numbers discussed, and the client is on board for all of it. They'll say the money isn't an issue at all, the plan's exactly what they want, and they don't mind waiting for the work. Then the start date comes around. The contractor gets moving, and the project is underway. From the start, everything goes smooth as can be. The line items slowly get ticked off, and it all seems like roses until the contractor is nearly finished. And that's when the second guesser strikes. They'll begin with a slightly hostile request. They'd like to see the receipts for the job. They want to see what all the money actually got spent on. Now, keep in mind, in most building situations, the contractor is under zero obligation to furnish those receipts. But perhaps hoping to avoid conflict, they may actually open up some of the purchasing records. The second guesser now points out leftover material. Cut off pieces of lumber, remnant tile, joint compound in the bottom of buckets. They say, "What about this stuff? I shouldn't have to pay for this stuff. You didn't even use it." And if the contractor has cast iron patience, they'll point out that every job has leftover material. Nobody can realistically be expected to use every inch of lumber on a job, and you always order extra to avoid shortages. But that's just the beginning. The second guesser is on a roll now. They start pointing out tiny flaws that they walked right by the day before. "What about this little thing over here? Why did you leave it like this?" They begin finding issues all over the house. And suddenly, the whole picture has changed. They're not happy with the work at all. In fact, they're angry. They thought you had a good reputation. They thought you were going to take care of the job, but you've let them down. They would have hired someone else if they'd known that your work was going to be like this. And by now, fire alarms are going off in the contractor's head. They were so close to the finish line, but suddenly there's discussion of them fixing things that aren't really bad. And there's even talk of the client withholding payment. How could this be? What has happened here, of course, is that the contractor has fallen into a classic sociopathic trap. The second guesser knew they were going to do this from the start. They played the role of the perfect client as long as they had to. Then, when the contractor was most vulnerable, they pulled the rug out from under them. They know that the contractor doesn't want a legal fight, and they don't want their name dragged through the mud on social media. They're counting on the contractor to flinch. They'll try to get them to reduce the price at the end or tack on work that wasn't even part of the job. In short, they'll try to get anything extra they can get, and they're using fear and aggression as a tactic. It's totally sadistic behavior. And if you think these people aren't really out there, just ask any good contractor you know. See if it hasn't happened to them. As I said, I've lived through it twice, and I'm afraid that, unfortunately, it's going to happen to every good contractor eventually. That's it, the darkest, ugliest little corner of contractor-client relations that I know of. But fortunately, extremely few of my jobs wound up like this. Most of my clients were fantastic people that I loved working for. By the end of a long project, I often thought of them as friends, and we worked happily together for years to come. Anyways, that's my debt paid to all those good contractors out there. A chance to even the tables a little bit and show that good contracting relations require both parties working together. It's Halloween week, the greatest holiday season of the year. I hope that your Halloween is fun and safe and that you enjoyed the video. And if you haven't done it yet, feel free to hit that subscribe button and check back with us for more videos coming up soon. I'm Ethan James with TheHonestCarpenter.com. I'll see you next time.